Welcome, everyone, to the Energy Advisors podcast. I'm your host, Rex, that energy guy. Glad to have you with us today, no matter where you might be watching or listening around the globe. Recently we picked up our 18th country. Oh, boy, it's pretty good. I'm chasing Antarctica, but we'll see if I can get a research ship, someone to listen down there. Anyway, I've got a great episode for you today, an interview with a real clear pillar in this industry for renewables because tax credits are a foundational part of decision making when it comes to looking at renewables. And so before we get into that conversation, I think you'll really enjoy our guest. We want to thank our partners in the show, our good friends over at Taxhive. Oh boy, serendipitous today. Taxhive is really an important key element when you are going to work and get professional services and make sure you got all of the tax credits, deductions, and rebates working for you. You want the best. And these guys are, and that's why they're partners in the show, taxhive.com. Our other partners in the show that we like to spotlight today, Go Green Community Initiative. It is the nonprofit that is driving education and protection in the industry. If you're looking to go solar or any other renewable, you want to engage them and go through their process to get a My Personal Energy Plan. Great process. It's free to you, and you're getting objective information. Our friends over at Smart Energy Centers. Look for these to be popping up all over the United States. More than 2,000 locations coming, a place you can go in, talk to licensed professionals, and take a look at renewable solutions for your home. And lastly, but not least, Universal Wind Kinetics. Universal Wind Kinetics is bringing to the marketplace micro wind turbines. And if you haven't looked at this technology, you need to, because the efficiency gains in the technology are so great that they actually compete with solar panels when the wind's blowing. But then it's like anything in this industry when the proper use case is happening. All right, got that out of the way. Thank you for obliging me so we make sure that we can continue to afford to do the show. All right, well, as I preluded to, got a great guest. We have the CEO and founder of Taxhive with us, Chris Brown. And I'm excited to have this conversation today because it's so important. Most people don't ever stop and think that their biggest bill is always their taxes. Yeah. It always is. So welcome, Chris. Glad to have you with us.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here today, Rex. And, we'll probably get into it today, but since our introduction, I've just been blown away with all the good that you guys are doing to try to help make sure that consumers get what they think they're getting and get the very best of what's out there. And this partnership with you, this opportunity to come in and kind of unpack what's going on in the industry. I'm super excited to spend some time together today and hopefully send everybody on their way able to make far better decisions as they get into the renewable energy space. So thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Glad to have you here in the conversation. So I want to set the table a little bit so people understand why proper tax consulting and then also understanding makes such a big difference, okay? In 2024, end of 2023 and 2024, we just had a really rough time in the distributed solar industry. And in full disclosure, people know that when I do the show, I am part of that industry. But between interest rates that have skyrocketed because of inflation, and then also the net metering policy changes in the industry, particularly in California, but it's coming. Lots of those states are looking at that with their public utility companies. There is a lot of pressure on this industry, and it's financial pressure. In 2024, there have been more solar providers go out of business, and we're talking some big ones went out of business this year. It is estimated, and it's probably conservative, that possibly 40% of the solar providers in the industry have dried up and gone away or filed bankruptcy and trying to reorganize because the market's not moving that fast. And because of that, I just kind of go back to my grandfather's old saying, desperate people do desperate things. And I think there's some more desperation going on. And then this is an industry that historically has struggled because there's just a lot of people out there not speaking the truth, setting false expectations. So it's really important. So, but before we get into all that, there's a personal side of this stuff. So we want to go back to a little bit about how you got here, Chris. Now we don't have to go back to the year of your birth and what sports you played or your hobbies growing up, but if you could, because it's always important, we got a lot of young listeners in the program. Just give us a little bit of hopscotch on how you got to where you're at today with Taxhive.
Yeah, I'd love to. My background in life and in the career is a marketer, running sales organizations. That's my background, and for years, me and my partners, we ran a number of different entities and businesses, and they kind of always had a play into the tax space. We were servicing particularly business owners, and our business owners needed tax help. And being a small business owner ourselves, we realized that there wasn't a really good world to service the small business owner.
Right.
And so out of that, we'd kind of built a niche, a side hustle, if you want to call it, where we had helped our clientele get tax help and get serviced in a great way. And about 4 years ago now, we really just saw this need in the tax space, and we decided to go all in and actually create a tax firm that met this need. And we'll probably talk about this a little bit more today, but my partner in this is Kevin O'Leary,
Yes.
Mr. Wonderful from Taxhive, or from Shark Tank, sorry, part of Taxhive.
Yeah.
And we wanted him to be part of it. He'd done some business with partners and investors of mine.
Hmm.
So a little over 4 years ago now, we got a chance to go pitch Mr. Wonderful.
Really?
And that was quite the experience.
Well,
Go ahead. You got a question?
well, if you don't mind, let's go down that path because most everybody in North America has seen, Shark Tank.
Yeah.
So how did that all unfold? What happened? How did you guys even get the crazy idea to go talk to them?
Well, it's really interesting. Again, we hadn't had a business relationship with him, but he had spoken at events and done different things for some of my investors. And we knew as we went into this that if we could have a face and a brand like Kevin, the credibility that he brings is just different.
Yeah,
And if we could bring that kind of credibility to what we do, that it would be beneficial.
sure.
So we got this appointment arranged. It was down in Scottsdale, Arizona, at
Okay.
the JW Marriott down there. Beautiful resort. If you haven't been, it's a great place to hang out. Got a lazy river and everything else. But we went down there, and I went down there with a handful of investors in the business, and I was the pitch guy.
Okay.
And I remember going down there and being a little nervous. I mean, you've seen Kevin on Shark Tank, right? And
Right.
what does he say? If you don't know your numbers, you're dead to me, right?
Right.
And so I remember prepping heavily, understanding all the metrics that we needed to know to go down into this pitch. And we get down there, we're having lunch, and it comes time for the pitch. And I start pitching Kevin, and kind of sheepishly, and admittingly, I don't think I approached it right. I went full blown pitch mode, and we get a few minutes in, and Kevin just gives this stop. And what do? I keep talking, right? And
Right.
Kevin says stop, and luckily some of my investors kind of chimed in and helped out. But the reason that he was telling me to stop is he said, "Well, Chris, I'm in, but you're not going to want me in." And I was kind of taken back, and I said, "Well, we all kind of said, help us unpack that. What does that mean?" Come to find out, we didn't know this. Kevin had owned and been part of a tax firm in Canada.
Oh, really?
And, Kevin is a big proponent of anything that supports business,
Hmm.
anything that supports entrepreneurship. He actually spends a lot of time right now on Capitol Hill, meeting with politicians,
Yeah.
driving the conversation. And he said, I would love to be part of this. It's a business sector that I wish I never would have gotten out of, but you're not going to want me to be part of it. And
Wow.
we said, well, why? And the reason why was that when you go into business with Kevin, we're not part of the Shark Tank family. So when we come into a business this way, there's a lot of vetting that goes out. You get vetted by, the likes of Sony and ABC, and the Shark Tank group is vetting you because their brand is on the line. And
Uh-huh.
Kevin said, you're not going to want to go through this vetting process. And we said, hey, we're not afraid of that. That's why his brand is as good as it is. They don't let his brand go places that don't provide quality and credibility, which I actually think ties a lot into what you're doing and the reason we love you so much, what you're doing to make sure that things are done right, that things are delivered appropriately, and that clients understand what's going on. So we went through that vetting process. We weren't afraid of it. It took months.
Yep.
And here we are now 4 years later with Kevin as an actual partner and equity. He has an equity position in the company. And our goal, kind of initially started out to say, hey, let's service small business owners. That was kind of our niche. Let's do tax planning for small business owners. And now we've seen this opportunity in the solar space that has brought us into this space that we're super excited about to kind of hitch that wagon to this remarkable train that we've built over the last 4 years.
Wow. So I just have to ask, 'cause we're both family guys. What did your family think when you got that deal put together? Did they believe you?
Well, my family just laughed at me, right? Short Chris, you're going to go on Shark Tank. I mean, that's not what we were doing, but that was the vision they had in their head,
Right.
right? That we were going to go pitch Kevin, and I think everybody was shocked. Everybody knows me. I'm just a normal guy.
Right.
I'm not Kevin O'Leary, right? And
Right.
I think it speaks volumes, though, that a normal guy, I guess this is the American dream, right? That normal
Sure.
people, smart people, good people, but when you have a great idea and you provide a great product and a great service, it's amazing to me how opportunities seem to come together the right way. And I really believe that that's what happened. I think that, for me, God, other people could call it other things, opened up opportunities, and we've got to take advantage of those opportunities and connections. But Kevin was kind of we were in the right place at the right time with Kevin. And I think there was a lot of shock and awe, right? That who's your business partner? And when I sent them pictures of Kevin and I together, there was a little bit of a shock. And then
Yeah.
recently, when I was down at his house in Miami and showing him his view and Kevin and I at the house, there was even more shock. But the great thing about Kevin that I maybe just have to say about Kevin while we're on the subject, certainly you see his persona on Taxhive, and he is a remarkably sharp, got a businessman with a high business acumen. But he is one of the best individuals that I've had the pleasure of doing business with. He wants everybody to succeed. He wants to make sure that clients are taken care of. He wants to make sure that things are done right. And just a remarkable human being, and a blessing to learn from him and to have him be part of our organization.
Well, I'm happy to have the association with you folks in partnership in the show because I feel the same way. There's certain people, start talking to them, you're like, I don't know, their intent. But what I do like about Kevin is you can just tell he's intentional. I guess that's the word that I would use. And so then also too, he's just involved in so many things, and he's constantly on the business, being a pundit speak about. I loved when he was being interviewed. I don't remember what channel, but he was on and he was talking about the situation where the politicians were chasing down Trump for overvaluing, Mar-a-Lago and all that stuff. And he gets on and defends him. He goes, everybody does that, right?
Yeah.
So, I
He
think that's
speaks the
great.
truth,
Oh
right? You
yeah,
might not like it, but he speaks the truth.
speaks the truth, and I appreciate that. Sometimes it's hard to find that today. All right, so let's dive in a little bit and help people understand a little bit more about ITC and then some of the other vehicles that might be available to them. Unfortunately, in this industry, again, bad actors have permeate the entire industry. There are people out there making claims that it's all one thing, and they make these ridiculous, oh, you can offset 90% of your stuff. Well, that's just not true. So let's give our folks a little bit of a textbook at a high level. I mean, we don't need to get into the weeds of what the number of each form is and those stuff, but help us understand the difference between ITC and then, potential for depreciation and potential for interest, because those are really three areas. And then, of course, there are rebates that are provided for the state, that kind of stuff.
State,
So, yeah.
power, companies. I think if it's okay with you, Rex, it might be helpful for us to talk a little bit about the challenge that we've seen
Yes,
in the
that would be
industry.
great.
And I think this plays right into what you're talking about. Um, it's interesting. Sad might be a word to use, and I know you've seen this. The federal credits available are such a strong play that they really factor into people's decisions to purchase solar.
Absolutely.
You know, candidly, right? If those credits weren't there for most people, not everybody, but for most people, solar wouldn't make financial sense.
Exactly.
But there's such an incentive from the government to want to go green and to want to produce more energy through renewables that they're betting on this. And I know you recently had Congressman Curtis on, and you know, Republican, Democrat, I don't think it matters.
No, it doesn't.
There is an appetite to invest. And so because of that, the pitch to buy solar weighs heavily on these government incentives that are out there. And it has to, because without those, they just don't make sense.
Exactly.
Right. And that's become even more the case with the higher interest rates that you mentioned and different things going on. And what a lot of people don't realize, and this is one of the pain points that we've seen, so often when people purchase a solar system, a renewable energy system, what will happen is these loans will be baked with kind of an assumption that credits are received, that those credits are given to the loan, and the loan reamortizes in 12, 15, 18 months.
Key thing to point out. That is so important.
And what happens is if you don't get those credits or you don't put that money towards the loan, your loan all of a sudden reamortizes in 12, 18, 24 months. And all of a sudden the payment is way more than you were paying before you got solar.
Right.
And what's happened, I think, which is sad to your point, there are some players that don't really help clients understand this.
Right.
And so, number one, we see people that aren't eligible for credits being told that they can get credits.
Right.
We see people that are eligible just get turned loose on their own, right? They get told there's credits out there, but they have no idea how to actually get them.
Right.
And so we see people that should have gotten a 30% credit not get it just because they didn't know how to go about getting it. And all of a sudden, their loan reamortizes and they're paying a lot more money than they expected. Or thirdly, we see people get that ITC credit and think they can just go buy a new car, take a vacation, because they don't realize what happens with the loan. And then all of a sudden they're surprised. And so I think, you know, this kind of conversation that we're having today, we're hoping to eliminate all that, right? We're hoping that consumers can come in and say, okay, there really is money, number one. Number two, how do we get that money? And number three, how do we make sure that we're one of the ones that gets what we think we bought? So maybe with that background, maybe can I come back and answer your question now?
Yeah. No, I think that's important. And then I want to point out something here also. One of the things that drives me bananas in financial disclosure and renewables is there are people who will misrepresent it, because there's a big difference between a tax refund and a tax credit.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many sob stories I have heard where an unethical person, or maybe unintentional, but it's not the case sometimes, where they told the client they get a tax refund when it's actually a credit.
Yeah. And I mean, kind of along that similar line, they paint a picture that it's all coming year one.
Yes.
When in reality, like you say, these refunds, they come over years, and even credits can come over years depending on my taxable income and what I'm paying in taxes. And I think those are kind of the two of the big things that we see is what's coming and how it's coming aren't always positioned correctly.
Correct.
And it leads to somebody who should be really excited about their new project, right? They should just be excited to the moon and back about the new solar system they got on the roof, the battery pack they got in the garage, whatever it is. And because it wasn't disclosed appropriately, they end up with the sour taste in their mouth. And that's what we're hoping to clean up and avoid.
Well, you know, and people, again, I get on this soapbox a little bit. We're really at a fortuitous time in the marketplace for one particular reason. The federal government isn't going to give you tax credits if you build a new barn or a new garage in your backyard. So if you're looking at this in real net dollars, again, net dollars, when you look at your tax obligations, there aren't a whole lot of technologies or structures or systems that the government's going to nearly pay for a third by giving you that tax relief. Okay. And so I look at people, I'm like, wow, you're crazy not to use these tax credits. But then, like you said, most people don't understand it. They don't understand that it can be extended out over a period of time. And then also too, I'll make another point here. The transition to renewable solutions for your house, trying to get energy independent, it's a long-term play.
Yeah.
You can look at windows that can qualify. You can look at insulation, new roof, solar generation systems, heat pumps, water heaters. Heck, they even give you credits for windows and for doors and stuff. So it's complex. Most people are only thinking about that one project, kind of the one and done solar perspective. But how we like to look at this and how I like to look at this as someone who's trying to educate the marketplace through the podcast, you got a lot of things to do to get efficient. Now, I don't use the buzzwords, about the climate stuff. Yes, that's wonderful. Everybody gets up in the day and I want a cleaner world and those things. But for me, I want protection for my family. I want to save money and I want to be smart about it.
Yeah.
You know,
And listen, the government's trying to make it affordable for you to do that.
they
right?
are. They are.
With these ITC credits. So maybe I think your question was first unpack the ITC.
Yeah, let's unpack
right?
the ITC. I'm sorry. I get on soapboxes here
No,
because this is what I do for a living.
I'm the one who derailed this with trying to give us some backstory here.
No.
So
You're perfectly okay.
I deserve
We need the
blame.
backstory on that.
But what's happened, the major credit on the market, and we'll unpack some of these other opportunities as well, but the major opportunity right now is the government has this ITC. It's a credit that will pay you up to 30% through a tax credit of your system. So to do easy numbers here, if I put a $50,000 system on my roof, and if I have the right materials that qualify, I'll point out that things like roof repairs, as you know, don't qualify for the ITC credit, but most things that go into putting a system on your roof are going to qualify.
Right.
The brackets, the actual labor to install, battery packs, most things are going to qualify. But if I put that $50,000 system on my roof, the ITC says I'm going to get a $15,000 tax credit, 30%. Now, the way that this works is I do have to file some forms at the end of the year. So this doesn't just magically happen. I actually have to get out there and file. Typically, it's form of 5695. Again, we don't need to go into too much detail here, right? But typically, we're going to file a form that's going to help us create a 30% tax credit on that system. So I get this $15,000. But let's just talk through maybe how this actually works in reality. Because the government doesn't send me a $15,000 check. That's not the way that this works. And I think that's what a lot of people think in the back of their head. They think I'm going to put this system up and I get a $15,000 check in the mail. What this is this is a credit that goes on my taxes at the end of the year when I file.
Right.
So the great thing about a tax credit is these are real dollars. This is real money that the government will pay me through a tax credit in order to offset the cost of that system. So hypothetically, if my tax bill is $30,000 at the end of the year, I'm going to be able to reduce that to $15,000. That's going to be a real offset, dollar for dollar, that comes. So that could happen a couple ways. If I'm a business owner, now I don't have to pay money if I were to owe. But if I overpaid, I am going to get a check back for those dollars that I actually overpaid, and I'm going to get that money back. Now, the one thing that I will point out here, though, is that sometimes, depending on my tax bill and how my income works, I may have to roll that tax credit over a couple of years, and it is something that can roll over to a couple of years. If I have the taxable income that justifies that full amount year one, then I do get that full amount year one. But we see people disappointed sometimes because sometimes it is taken over a couple of years. And sometimes that is a credit that has to be rolled over a couple of years. I will point out, though, we've got to make sure that we start taking it the year that the system was put in service. So it is really important.
Really important to get
sure
that first year.
The year that your system was put in service, you've got to take that credit. And I just saw this today. We're sitting in 2024. We saw today a client that had a system set up in 2022 and they didn't take the credit. Well, what we have to do to help them out is we actually have to go back and amend 2022 potentially amend 2023, but we do have to go back to the year that that was placed into service
Right.
and get that credit. And to be clear, you have to file, you have to qualify for it, but these are real dollars that the
Right.
government is giving you to offset the system. The one thing that I might point out here, Rex, coming back to maybe where we started, if you're purchasing the system, usually what happens is this credit is factored as if you already got it. And so your first 12 months or so, you're operating at a lower payment. And you need to take that credit and put it towards the loan so that when it reamortizes, that payment still stays as though you took the ITC credit. What
Right.
you don't want to do is take that money, take those dollars, go buy your kid a new Honda Civic, then your loan reamortizes, and all of a sudden you're paying $100 more than you thought you were. So
Right.
just be aware that not all the time, but the bulk of these loans are starting out as if you have already gotten the credit and put that credit towards the cost of the system.
Right.
So when you get that money, make sure you allocate it towards the system so that you don't get a surprise on your next payment.
Right. And let's go down we talked about the possibilities with a small business owner. If you're a W-2, does it work the same manner? Because not everybody owns a business. So let's talk about that. I've paid in through my employer all year. I'm probably going to get depending on how I did my elections, get a refund. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But now I've got this big snake that just went through the system here, or maybe it's like a antelope that just went through the snake,
Yeah.
digesting. I have this credit. Let's use our number 15,000. Okay. How's that work for a W-2 homeowner?
So I think let's just maybe unpack it in the way that that you just described it. Most W-2 homeowners are paying in all year long, right? And so I might I might typically get a refund of, let's just say, $1,000 at the end of the year.
Right.
Hypothetically, right?
Hypothetically.
Well,
Right.
what this is going to do is this is going to say, well, actually, no, I don't just get that $1,000, but that 15,000 is going to literally be credited on my taxes as though it paid my tax bill. So now it will be as if I paid $15,000 more to the government type situation here, and I'm going to now get those dollars back in a refund.
Right.
The one thing that I will point out to you, though, is that this doesn't take you below zero. That's
No,
when we
no,
may need
no.
to that's when we may need to roll it forward into future years. So let's just say that I only paid $10,000 in on taxes
Right.
and my credit's 15,000. Well, I can get that 10,000 and I might roll that other $5,000 credit towards a subsequent year.
Right. Yeah, I just want to make sure. And see, that's where a lot of people get mixed up that are out there presenting these things. And again, that's why you listen, folks in the audience, never work with somebody who's not licensed. I mean, it's really important because these are things that they have to learn. But I think where the uneducated salesperson out there, he's pitching the fact you're getting a refund automatically when he knows nothing about your tax liabilities and your situation. And that's where people get in trouble. It really does.
Yeah. The way that I would frame it to maybe sum it up and try to be real precise, the credit pays for or offsets your tax liability.
Correct.
If you have zero tax liability, it doesn't go into I get a paycheck from the government, right?
Right. Right.
But again, as a W-2 employee, typically I've paid money in all year long. And so if I've paid more than that $15,000 in this hypothetical scenario, that will give me a $15,000 credit towards that tax bill, which creates a real check from the government coming back to me.
Okay. Fantastic.
I think maybe the one other thing, Rex, about tax credits, that I may just point out to people here, because I just want to make sure that we understand this a little bit, is that when it comes to a tax credit, it's important to understand that I'm going to get this money, but I have to file up front. I know we've mentioned this in passing here, but if I haven't gotten it, I don't get to start getting it 3 or 4 years down the road.
Right.
But if my liability is such that year one, I don't get the full amount, I don't lose it. I just carry it forward year over year. So don't think that if I don't get that full benefit year one, I've lost it. This isn't a use it or lose it type program.
Correct, correct.
I get to carry it forward. Don't quote me on this because I don't have the document in front of me. I think you can carry it forward clear until 2034 is the current year that I can carry it forward to. So I've got time. If for some reason my tax liability is low, that doesn't mean I'm not going to get it. You know, we see this particularly with maybe somebody who's retired,
Exactly.
right? And maybe they don't pay a lot in taxes. Well, that's okay. Just know we're going to have to take this benefit over years. We're not going to get it all
Right.
year one. And that's why it's important, I think, for solar reps to not promise a certain dollar year one. Teach the
Yeah.
principle, right? Help people understand this will offset tax liability. If we have that much tax liability year one, great. If not, we don't lose it. We just take it over a couple, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever the time frame is.
Yeah, that's a really important fact you brought out. I know people who sell solar, and if they finds out that they are at retirement or retired or just before, they'll walk away because they feel like the financial viability of that deal won't go through because they don't understand that how far that can be carried forward.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in our current economics, where typical US household, if it has a $400 unexpected bill, it causes a lot of stress. A lot of our retirees are really not fully retired, and Social Security is not a big number. So a lot of them are working. I mean, and a lot of it to do. My grandparents worked clear up to the week before they died because they would have driven themselves nuts otherwise. So people who are at near or in retirement are still good candidates to be able to take advantage of those. But again, it's just like anything in this industry. It depends on the use case. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing, that where it really comes to play is that you need to be working with professionals that can help you with this. And again, the average solar salesperson is not a tax consultant. And I would tell people, don't listen to them. What I would tell them to do is get you guys engaged because you understand all this. You know, solar guys don't spend their whole day reading tax code and applying.
And I think the thing that I would say is maybe, listen, I'm a big fan of putting renewable energy into your mix on your home.
Right.
And I think the other thing that I would point out here, though, Rex, that I think is important for people to understand is even if this isn't a big win year one, right? But let's say between these renewables and the tax credits, I'm able to come out a little bit ahead. Well, it's what you mentioned earlier. This really is a long-term play. We believe, and I don't have a crystal ball, but we believe that the cost of energy is going to continue to go up.
Absolutely.
So if I own a system and I'm locked into that now, well, that rate, even if it's kind of neck and neck with the power company currently, I'm betting on 25, 30 years of savings. You know, just today, it's kind of ironic that I heard this today on the drive into work. I'm here in Utah, and I heard that there's a proposal to up the rates by 35% here across a big chunk of our state.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't surprise anybody, right? So when those hikes come up, if these credits allow me to get into the game, even if maybe it's just saving me a little bit of money now, well, man, if I can avoid that 35% tax hike that's coming on power potentially here in Utah, all of a sudden, you know, that could be hundreds of dollars for the average person that they're saving, that turns into thousands upon thousands of dollars over years.
Okay. And let me give you a scenario that I think is very wide in the marketplace. Let's say you got a young couple, okay, and they're working and they're not making a ton of money right now. All right. They go ahead and jump into solar because they're all for it, you know, all the benefits. And then in 2 or 3 years, their income doubles, triples.
Yeah.
Their tax liability just went way up. Well, if they're smart and long-term thinkers, okay, not everybody can do this. They need to be looking at what is my income going to be over this time, because I may not have to have as big a liability if I can roll this out.
Yeah.
And this happens all the time. I can remember when I was young punk in my career, gosh, I hardly made anything in comparison to my life now. Sometimes I tithe more than I used to make income. So I just think people really need to stop and take a long range look at that. It's like I get on my soapbox about this. You can't look at a transition to renewables in just a one-time hop. There's too many things to do. But if you're smart, you're going to think down the road a little bit because, you heard the interview with John Curtis, the congressman, and he most likely will be the senator. These things aren't going away.
No.
The government wants it to happen. We need it to happen to support the grid. And so it's important for people to be looking past just year one.
Well, you said I thought it was really interesting. I don't want to rehash your previous podcast, but the amount of energy that AI is going to require, we aren't producing enough energy.
No,
This isn't just trade out this for this.
no.
There is a surge of energy need coming,
Yep.
and how are we going to keep up? And I think all of these things are part of keeping up.
Well,
Really
I'll
important.
support that too. A couple things. I will throw that out because I tell everybody this: a single AI transaction. So I do a query, Chat GPT, write me a country song, right? That just used more electricity than your refrigerator did for the whole day. Okay.
Crazy.
So that's it. Everybody that's running around is telling Elon Musk and all people, any analysts are saying, we got to have it all. We need all of those things. Plus, going back to your point you made, the energy rates will not go down. Okay. And prior to 2020, most utility companies had a industry rate increase roughly matching inflation. Okay. Because they're like any other company. They got to pass their costs on, right? That's just how it works. Well, okay. So here in Colorado, under our good friends at Xcel, that was about it. There was 5 to 8% a year over a 20-year history. But then all of a sudden, when inflation went nuts, in the last 3 years here in Colorado, our rates have increased 65%.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
you can count
Well,
on it.
it's simple supply and demand, right? I think that's the point. It is supply and demand, and that's why, again, I don't have the crystal ball, but I don't see any world in which the demand for energy doesn't continue to grow exponentially.
No.
And so that's why I think right now is such a good time to get into solar. I don't think that the government's going to go away from offering incentives. I
No.
think we're going to continue to offer incentives.
Right.
But not only is there the ITC credit, but as you know, there are potentially, and I guess this is kind of the part of the second question is, just a couple things I'll throw out. There's a lot, and I hope you don't mind me,
No.
throwing out another website, but there's a website called desireusa.org
Yep.
where you can search your zip code and you can find all sorts of potential credits.
Right.
Just a couple of big ones that are out there right now that we see a lot is there is opportunity to get credits for USA manufactured equipment manufactured in the USA. There's a really interesting one right now about if you live in an energy community.
Yes.
Energy communities are derived from, was there a coal plant that was shuttered in your area? Or was there a percent of people working in the fossil fuel industry, and it kind of couples fossil fuel industry employment with unemployment rates in your county.
Right.
And it's really interesting when you go look at the maps on this geographically. I don't know about population wise, but geographically, it's a quarter of the country falls into one of these energy communities. And
right.
So my point in just saying all of this is, whether it's Taxhive or somebody else, make sure that you actually get a tax professional that understands solar, so that you can get your ITC credit. And we see way too many people miss out on that.
Right.
But B, that we can look for these other credits in your area and see if there's anything specific to you, because there is potential to offset significant dollars in relationship to your system. And our advice being accountants is always, whatever that credit is, go throw it towards paying off your system.
Exactly.
Don't go buy a new car with it. I keep coming back to a new car, and maybe that's just because my daughter's wanting a new car right now. Who knows? But
been there, done that, I tell you.
Take those dollars, put it towards the system, and use this real money that the government's willing to pay to bring down the true cost of that system in your life, and then enjoy those years of benefit for years to come as the demand goes up and the cost goes up with it.
Agreed. And a couple things to point out some important aspects of what we just talked about here is, we're on a collision course a little bit with the utility companies. as more and more people go to renewables, that means that the people are going to be paying them less, which is a good thing, right? Okay. And they go to the state public utility commissions and they cry the blues. And I've been in those meetings and it's, oh, we're losing this and that. Well, the truth of the matter is, which is the unspoken about 800-pound elephant in the room. Anybody can pull up their utility bill. And if it's not listed there, you can call them and you can ask them, what percentage of the dollars that I pay for my electricity goes into transportation? And they will. They'll tell you. Well, mine here in Colorado, 67 cents out of every dollar I pay them is transportation cost. So the utility companies don't cry Argentina for them very much, because when I put my solar in and nobody else in my neighborhood did, and I back metered my excess, I just cut the transportation cost of that electricity to my neighbor. Now, that's never an argument they bring to the table.
No.
I've just increased their margin. So again, it's very complex, but I think the thing is that as we're talking here today, you just got to get educated so you understand everything. And then what I recommend people doing is just a long-term thinking, okay? It's highly likely that you could have a use case coming up in the future that you want an EV. They're beautiful vehicles. They are amazing technology. And with bidirectional vehicles coming up, well, that can be your battery. So you need to be thinking about these things down the road. But again, as I opened up the podcast today, taxes are always your biggest bill. So you kind of be thinking these things through. I mean, if you would have talked to me 3-4 years ago, I might have been the last guy on the planet to think about buying an EV.
Yeah.
But the more I got educated, the more I think. But it's not just that. We now have more and more cordless tools. My whole garage is full of them. But converting that AC to DC with those little battery chargers is horribly inefficient.
Yeah.
Okay, it's terrible. So as you mentioned, consumption's going to grow and grow. You can count on rates growing. And so it's so important to be considering what the tax credits are. Because again, like I said, government's not going to pay for a 30-year shed that you put in your backyard.
No.
You just aren't. Now, there are other scenarios, and again, it gets into small business too. And again, we're not asking you to provide tax advice here, but there are other vehicles that are available to people based on their situation, okay? And those can get into depreciation, they can get into writing off interest, and those are things that you really have to talk to somebody case by case, right?
Yeah, and I might just what I might like to do on this one, Rex, is provide maybe just a snapshot, because as you know, there is so much disinformation
Yes.
out there about this. So without giving specific tax advice, because we can't unless we talk to you, I want to mention that there is a play to potentially depreciate a solar system. There's a couple things about this. Number one, you have to be engaged in business purpose. So this isn't just something you can do. Because of that, one of the ways that you can engage in a business purpose is that if you have a net metering agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a net metering agreement in place, that is one of a number of key components that you need to look at. It's important for people to realize too that the Department of Energy has come out and said that they believe that any income derived from a net metering agreement is taxable.
Yes.
So you have to be paying taxes on that income that is derived from the transaction. Now, there's a few other criteria, but if you meet the criteria, there's an opportunity to not only get tax credits, but to also offset your income, your W-2 income from your business, whatever it is, by depreciating the cost of your system over time. In addition to that, if this were the play that were right for you, you could also write off the interest associated with purchasing that system, or even potentially there is a play if you have a qualifying lease that you could even make this depreciation play if you had a lease in place, if it were a qualifying lease. Not all leases qualify for this.
Right.
But here's the point that I want to make. There are rules and ways in which this can be done. But what I want to point out is two things about this that I think are extremely important. Number one, this is not an upfront play. This is something that is taken over time. We depreciate a system over years, typically,
Yes.
is how that works.
Just like you would any other business equipment, a truck.
Exactly right.
Right.
Exactly right. Now, there's some rules that typically allow us to get in doing this over 5 years. So it's not like a home where we're having to take it over 20 some odd years, right? But over 5 years, you're able to depreciate that. Coming back to your original point, though, this is different than a tax credit. What I'm doing is I'm writing off a portion of that system's cost that reduces my
Deuces.
taxable income. It's not a dollar for dollar. It reduces my taxable income. But hypothetically, if I'm in a 25% tax bracket, I'm not paying 25% on
Right.
that portion that was written off. So there is a real benefit, but it isn't a dollar for dollar benefit. So I think that's the number one thing to make sure that people understand is that this is something that is taken over years. It's not some big, huge upfront lump sum per se. It is something that is taken over years. And number two, I will point out again that this is something that has to offset income. So if I don't have income, I can't use this. Or if credits and other things bring my tax liability down to zero, I have to roll that depreciation forward into future years, into subsequent years. That write-off of the interest is taken over the life of the system as long as I'm making payments. It's not taken up front. So this is a great play. I don't want to pretend like I'm downplaying it. For the right person in the right situation, it is a great play. But just know that this is being taken over years. I have to qualify through having a business set up as part of this. I have to have a net metering agreement set up as part of this. I have to pay taxes on the income derived from that as part of this.
Right.
Again, none of us is saying it's a bad thing to do. It's just saying make sure you do it right and don't buy into the idea that there's some magical pill where I do nothing and
All of a
I'm
sudden
going to
it's
save a
there.
lot of money.
Right. So, okay, let's talk for a moment. Like any business, you have competitors. Okay. Just like all the stuff that I involved in. I got competitors everywhere.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in the marketplace that differentiates yourself? And we don't want to disparage anybody, but what makes Taxhive different than other people out there who are offering similar things, or maybe their marketing's a little deceptive? What
Yeah.
what makes Taxhive different?
Well, I would say a couple things. I'm gonna maybe share two things with you. Number one is coming back to that relationship that I have with Kevin O'Leary
Okay.
and coming back to him. I mentioned at the very beginning that when we entered into that relationship, it wasn't just getting Kevin to sign off,
Right.
but we had to get vetted out and make sure that we were going to deliver on what we said we could deliver on, and that we weren't going to be deceptive, because Kevin's reputation means too much to do that.
Yeah.
So I think number one is an understanding that just bluntly, my relationship with Kevin is on the line every time we perform. We go into an avenue of business and we perform work for somebody. So there's a high degree of reputation that I have to maintain.
Mhm.
So again, I'm not saying there aren't other good people in the world that do taxes. There are. But because of our relationship with Kevin, there is a high degree of credibility that we have to keep in order to keep that relationship. So if we share something, if we say something, I hope people can understand that that has to be accurate, or else my reputation with Kevin's on the line, and my relationship with Kevin is worth a whole lot more than doing anybody's taxes.
Exactly.
Number two, I think the thing that I would share is, again, coming back to what I kind of started with. My background is in sales and marketing, and my background is in scaling companies. And interestingly enough, when we decided to go all in the tax space, we went and shopped for all the right software, the right tools, the right everything else. And we realized that really in the tax world, everybody is years behind. They are years behind in systems and processes. And so certainly we use real tax software to prepare everybody's taxes, but we actually went and built a custom client interface. We
Mhm.
didn't go use any of the big names. I won't bag on any of them. I won't drop a name, but companies that wanted hundreds of thousands of dollars to interface with our clients and to gather data for us to do our work, they were garbage. I mean, it felt like I was in a 1990s web portal trying to get information. And so I think number two, I would say, is we went and built our own custom client portal and interaction with clients to bring, real modern day tech to the space.
Right.
And I'm actually really excited about where we can go in the future with AI. I think maybe the third thing, though, that I might just point out, Rex, is because our kind of bread and butter and our DNA reverts back to business owners, like I talked about, that we understand that saving money in taxes doesn't just happen at tax time when you file.
Exactly.
Part of our responsibility that we feel towards our clients is educating them and teaching them what they need to do to maximize their tax benefit. And so because of that, not only do we do your taxes, but it's flowed over into our personal side of tax preparation as well. While where we want to make sure that we educate clients, we don't just take your information and fill in the blanks the way that you told us. We want to ask the right questions to say, hey, are there other things that can be done to maximize your tax benefit and reduce your tax liability? And so because we come from an advising side, not just a prep side, I feel like all of our team does a great job looking for those areas and being proactive and finding ways to reduce tax liability, not just taking data that was given to us and matching it up and hoping that it was done right. We actually want to push on you a little bit as a client to make sure we get the right data. We use tech to do this, to make sure that we ask the right questions, to get the right information, so that when we spit out a tax return, we are maximizing your return, not just on the data you gave us, but on teaching you and educating you what you can be doing to produce the right result and reduce your tax liability.
Well, you're in violent agreement with myself. I spent 3.5 decades in technology, and I honestly believe if you're not looking at yourself as a technology company, you're behind.
Yeah.
It's important to be using these tools. It makes it more efficient. You can provide better service. It's more accurate. Again, computers can make mistakes. They do mistakes. I'm not a person that says it's all just wonderful, motherhood and apple pie, but that is a big difference out there. And so when I am the type of person who, if I'm engaging with a company and I can detect early on that they don't have systems to do things efficiently. I mean, I recently fired an insurance company, my auto insurance company, because they couldn't figure out how to do the billing correctly. And it was just this mess. So I really appreciate that you guys are on top of that. And it is a differentiator. It is.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. And I've really enjoyed it. It's been very, very educational. Sometimes we get up here and we get in some geek speak on these technologies. But the thing of it is, I will close this out by saying, the thing of it is, things aren't going to stay the same. There are going to be technology innovations happening in this industry so fast. It will not just be solar that you're dealing with. There'll be all kinds of new gizmos and things. And the thing of it is, you got to have somebody that really understands what can be applied for your tax liabilities and what can't. And it's not as easy as what we just said here on the phone or on the podcast, the phone. I'm thinking there. All right. Well, appreciate you coming on today, Chris. It's been awesome. And of course, I have that last question that I asked all my guests, and then you've listened, so it shouldn't come 100% out of left field. But when I do get a new guest, it can catch them. So in life, we talk about a bucket list, the things I'm going to do or want to do before my time is through, or at least my functional capabilities to do some of these things. That's a list we want to call a bucket list. Well, then there's an opposite. And that rhymes with bucket, but starts with an F. And so it's sort of the F-it list. So things that I have no intention of ever doing.
Yeah.
So what might be on Chris Brown's opposite of bucket list, that F-it list? What is something you don't ever have anyone to do?
Well, this will sound funny to you. I don't ever want to have more kids, Rex. and I'm going to tell you a little story about this to maybe clarify why I say that. I've got 4 beautiful kids, amazing kids. After our third, we got told we couldn't have any more kids. And shockingly, 9 years later, another one came. So we have this surprise caboose that we wouldn't trade for anything.
Right.
Right. But the reason I bring this up is it's an experience that I actually recently had, and this was the first thing that went to my mind. I was holding a neighbor's little baby, beautiful, gorgeous little girl. And the neighbor looked at me and she said, Chris, does it make you want another kid? And I said, no, let me tell you the thought that legitimately had just gone through my head. I've got a daughter getting married soon. And the thought that went through my head is I can't wait to have grandkids. But the thought of having kids where I have to get up and do that ever again in my life, I am past that. I am too old for that. I'm too worn out for that. I can't wait for so I'm going to maybe give you both. My bucket list is I can't wait to have grandkids and have that experience. But I don't ever want to repeat the experience as great as it was. I hope I'm not deterring you from parenthood. Parenthood is amazing, but at this stage of my life, I'm done, and now I want the reward of grandkids. I don't want any more kids. So I hope that
That
I hope
answers.
that works.
Well, I will give you testimony that matches. I raised 5 kids. My youngest is almost 22. And it was the greatest experience of my life, having those 5 kids. But I have friends that are my age who are on a second marriage and they start a second family. And I look at them like, you are crazy.
Yeah.
I don't want to be changing diapers. I don't want to be up at the middle of the night. I don't want to be not sleeping well because they didn't return from a basketball game on time, or who are they hanging out with their friends? No, no, thank you. And I am proud to say, and you will appreciate this because it's coming your way. I have 4 little grandsons, and it is the biggest joy because it's, this thing is a matter of age. When I was raising kids, my life was on fire. It was crazy and stuff. But now I got these 4 little grandsons. I can enjoy them. I'm smarter. If they're crying at the house, I don't care. I'm just happy to have them there. It's wonderful. So, but I would agree with you at this season of life where you already raised kids, and then no, thank you. I don't want an infant. No, thanks.
Hey, with that said, I'm coaching an 8-year-old girls soccer team tonight. So,
Okay.
I'm still in the thick of it. I just don't need any more to complicate my life right now.
Well, on the
So we'll
little
see.
part, because we went through a decade of diapers
Yeah.
when you have 5 kids, a decade of youth sports,
Yeah.
running around. I was never home before 8 o'clock at night most of the time,
Yeah.
dance, football, all that stuff. And then a decade of college. That was the expensive time. So no, it's a wonderful journey. Well, listen, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Your website is taxhive.com. There are a lot of entities that you can engage working with you. Go Green Community Initiative, the Smart Energy Centers, and then I see Kevin everywhere now that we have a partnership with you folks. So it's kind of funny. I'm always pointing out to the other guys, hey, look, here's Kevin again. So anyway, well, thanks for coming on. And we'll wrap this up and call it an episode for today. We want to thank our show sponsors, Taxhive, Smart Energy Centers, Go Green Community Initiative, and our friends over at Universal Wind Kinetics. So until next time, it's time to turn into another episode. If you're watching on the video platforms, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications. And if you're following on the podcast platforms, make sure you follow the show. So until next time, I will say what I say every time. Thanks, and make it a great day.